Hello. And today we'll continue with Kingsguard with Ramos' route. You wanted to tell yourself that this is just another nightmare. Knowing that it wasn't just a castle being attacked was a horrifying awakening. You grew up in a world that was at peace for so long that you had nurtured a false sense of security. Your city was supposed to be one of the safest places in the world, and yet here you were under siege. You didn't have time to stop and help the village people suffer. It seemed that the assassins weren't just after your blood. Every so often you caught slight wisps of that purple mist emanating from all around you. You questioned why no one else was noticing it or even mentioning it. Perhaps they all were just too focused on the chaos to care, or maybe this was just the start of you going mad. After all, you could stay sane after seeing this. After all, who could stay sane after seeing this? The cells and mass of silks pulled up high above the buildings as you turned down an alley. The ocean came into sight. The smell of seaweed and fish became even stronger as Ramos carried you along the age-worn wood of the docks. It was abnormally quiet. Usually the docks would have been so packed that every few minutes someone would have been bumped into the water. But right now, no one stirred. There wasn't anyone else around. Caden. Ramos turned around until a beastman appeared. Caden, what happened? Ramos, what the hell did you do? Relax, Leo. We just ran into some trouble when he got hurt. You were supposed to protect him. How could you let this happen? Will you calm down? Do you know what kind of hell I went through to keep him safe? Let go of him now. I should never have trusted you to his care. The fuck is wrong with you? Don't make me repeat myself. Leon. Leon looked nearly ready to draw his blade. His face was twisted with worry and contempt. I'm alright. I just got cut, is all. Let me see. Leon, there's no need for that. He saved me just as you asked. He saved me just as you asked, not just once but twice. You can look at it back at the step and see for yourself as nothing. Leon didn't seem any closer to calming down. You don't remember the last time you had ever seen him so angry over something like a simple flesh wound. It really wasn't his fault. Alright. I don't mean to interrupt, but we seem to have visitors. When the alleyways poured out 3, 5, 10 assassins. More than half of them looked injured with black blood dripping off their wounds. The black mist would stick around the group of them. More of them. Just how many of these guys are there? This many all at once. I don't know how they got here or where they were lying in wait, but we need to put a stop to this. They were paying for all that they have done. Not only a single one of them lay here on the prince. Even though they were outnumbered, Leandros and Drusilla still was head first into a group of assassins. Damn, can't catch a break. Well, better get in there. Doubt they can handle guys like these. They will set you back down on the ground and you stumble as the pain returns. Thinking to make it to the step by yourself. Yeah, good. We'll meet you on board then. Stay safe. Who the hell do you think you're talking to? He ran for it and joined the others. Still clasped behind you, the three of them fought surprisingly well together. Pursuer buried his knife deep into the leg of a man leaping towards the Ramos, while the rhino slammed aside one coming from Leandros. It was as if their previous feud had vanished. They knew who the real enemy was, and they set aside all differences to defeat them. Caden, get on the step. Leandros was granted a slight respite, a few seconds to glance your way before he was brought back to the front. The assassin broke free from the fight and made his way towards you. What ain't good enough for you? Ramos charged forward and slammed into the assassin, sending him flying into the air, over the railing, and into the sea. You didn't need to be told twice to stay here. Gawking wasn't doing them any favors. He scurried away from the fight and ran towards the ship. Every breath was ragged, your legs and arms were sore, and you wanted to lay down and rest. Hurry! You glance up. There's still a woman leaning along the railing of the step, waving towards you. She was so high up it was difficult to even see her face, but you could tell that it was Marilyn. Your heart sunk in relief. She made it out of the throne room okay. You wagered that Esther was likely inside. The boarding plank was still further down the boardwalk, and with every step you took, it seemed to be moving further and further away. The day was growing hotter by the second, and your heavy clothes only added to the heat. You moved even slower as the sweat-drenched clothes began to restrict your movement. Look out! You didn't take notice to the rapidly approaching footsteps pounding on the dock behind you. One moment you were scurrying to get on to the ship, and the next you were laying face down on a boarding plank. As searing pain ran along your backside as it felt as though your insides were leaking out. The warmth of the sun did little to keep the chill that began to creep along your body. The pain was unbearable, and you couldn't make a sound. Caton! Someone yelled your name in a familiar voice, but your mind couldn't put a name or face to it. Everything seemed to twist together, transforming into distorted shapes while the colors bled together like abstract art. It was a struggle to keep your eyes open. You couldn't help but give in to the darkness. You floated through a sea of nothingness. There was nothing to look at, nothing to do. You couldn't even see your arms or legs. You wondered if you even had arms or legs here. Or maybe you never had a body in the first place. A gentle breeze wafted a pleasing fragrance through the room. Your stomach growled and you yawned as you got out of bed. Only this wasn't your bed, actually neither were any of the other furnishings. Nothing looked to be of yesterday's make. You glanced outside a wide window and took in the sights of a magnificent-looking city. Heat waves distorting the view showed you just how hot the sun was today. You were high atop the city. As you looked down, you saw canals weaving around buildings with domed tops and trees that stretched up just as high, with leaves that spread out like fans. In the distance, you saw nothing but pale sand and rocky formations that outstretched for miles. The pure scent that tickled your nose caused your stomach to growl, so you followed it out the door. Sweet and spicy scents guided you down the hall into a dining room of sorts. In the center was a table filled to the edges with foods of all kinds. In the corners of the room were strange bronze and glass-looking vases with long hoses attached to them. A bit of smoke rose from the top, and a very slight charred smell filled the air. Whatever it was, it looked like some kind of complex, expensive machine used for drugs. Your stomach rumbled once more, and you turned back towards the food. There was chicken drenched in an orange sauce with green garnishes decorating the edges of the platter. A fully cooked boar in the center of the table, an apple in his mouth, and steam still rising from his body. Multiple side dishes of fruits and vegetables you knew, and many you had never seen before. I wonder if this is for some lord. If I wait around, maybe I can meet them and get some answers. Just by how everything looked, just prepared and untouched, you hoped you wouldn't have to wait, or at least before a guard or servant showed up. Trying to explain to them usually complicated matters, you knew that from first-hand experience. When you dressed up back in the castle to disguise yourself, a servant would run to get the guard, and the guard would immediately go for their blade. Since you were a trespasser here, though, you couldn't fall back on the fact that you were the prince of the kingdom to get out of those messes. Perhaps they won't mind if I just get a small plate. The food was enticing. Your entire being was mesmerized, and all you could think about was just how juicy that pork was. No, I have to wait. I don't want to get kicked out while stuffing my face like a starving thief. Your stomach disagreed with you, screaming angrily at your decision. Bad stomach, bad. It twisted and turned, ached in pain, and there was nothing you could do to stop the noise. Now's the time you decide to act up. There's a lot, though. You sat down at the table on a plush cushion rather than a chair that you were used to and continued to eye the food. Maybe just a piece of food while I'm waiting. He reached forward to grab something and heard a giggle coming from the end of the room. It was soft, sweet, and innocent like the chuckle of a shy girl. Out of the corner of your eye, you spied a figure watching you on the vantage through a doorway, giggling as they left. Hey, wait. You waited for a response, but the voice was growing further away. As soon as you looked back at the table again, the food was gone. Not even a crumb remained, and even the table was no longer set. I could have sworn there was food right here. Was I just hallucinating? No, I definitely smelled it. There was heat coming off from it. What am I saying? Who cares about that? You got up and chased after the figure before they got too far away. Just a quick trip down a hallway and you found yourself in a large, spacious room. More strange smells occupied a light haze that hung in the air. The sources from large censers gently swinging from the ceiling. You had to watch your step so not to tip over any of the 100 or so candles that littered the floor. You nearly jumped out of your shoes when you spotted the row of guards against the walls, all holding strange and unique weapons of different curvatures and shapes. Even more people, likely some kind of nobility, wandered around the edges of the room chatting. What was even stranger about them was the fact that all of them seemed to have a weapon. Some carried a long sword at their sides, others polearms attached to their back. One such lady even had a hair piece that you could easily identify as two daggers. Everyone in the room was armed, and your stomach dropped thinking about being the only one in the room without a weapon, and you were already trespassing anyway. They hadn't noticed you, and as you were about to back out, steps approached you from the hall you came from. You tiptoed your way to an empty part of the room and stood quietly in the shadows, even if it made you look more suspicious than before. With this many people around, trying to prove your case of how you managed to get here would not have been easy. A man dressed in garbs that looked far too big for him appeared from the hallway. He scurried to the end of the room and kneeled before a few steps that led up to what looked to be a throne. Mazeline, we have captured that Akalib that was prowling around the weapons stores. The man was talking to likely the lord of this palace, though you couldn't tell who. It was partitioned off with a curtain just there enough for you to make out the shadow of someone behind. As we have predicted, he is from the Terresta. We should kill them right now for their arrogance. Whispers began to dance around the room as all the nobles started to talk at once. After all we said we would do for them, they gone mad. Feed them a cactus and return the body. Show them what it means to defy us. The room became a buzz with commotion all about ways to torture this intruder. You backed up even further and hid yourself within the folds of some curtains. Just what would they do to you if they found you out? All their punishments seemed to grow only more violent and grim at the second. Enough! The voice boomed, echoing through the entire chamber and silencing all other noises. While you couldn't tell what she looked like, the voice was definitely female. Have you all forgotten my laws? Bring him forth. The man they talked about was soon brought forward, wrapped in heavy and well-used chains that dragged down to the floor. He was beaten and bloody, likely from the guards that captured him, and wore a little more than a rag to cover his body. You originally guessed it to be a disguise, one to bring less attention to himself as he snuck about the palace, but a more probable reason might have been that he was forced to wear it as humiliation. It wasn't that uncommon even among the knights in your kingdom to have their way with a few convicts to Leandra's dismay. The woman waved her hand, and the two guards removed the convict's chains as though they were letting him go. Before they parted to join with their comrades at the sides of the room, they settled them down to his hands and knees as if to make him bow before their ruler. The man rubbed his wrist and grunted as the guards walked away, but he ignored them and turned to stare at the Lord behind the curtain. Tell me your name, Rat, and why you have wormed your way into my fortress. I may even spare your life, so you give an adequate answer. The man chuckled. Spare my life, you say? The man stood and started to chuckle even harder. Might I inquire what you think is so funny? I'd rather have my feet chopped off before I ever bow before a slutty little cocksucker like you. The man lifted his hands up and made a sign with his fingers that caused gasps and murmurs from around you. All these people with weapons, he says that? What does he want to die? Does he want to die or something? Despite the obvious insult, the woman didn't seem to stir from her spot as though it were a mere wind that passed through her. The man was still laughing, but stopped as soon as the woman started to join in as well. Look at the balls on you. Whatever the man had said didn't seem to faze the Lord in the slightest. You couldn't deny that if you were up there, that man would likely have been beaten for saying something like that. Finally, someone who won't grovel and beg. The man was the one who seemed to be stunned here. I take it you're a spy, so you likely already know the law around here. The Lord pointed to the servant who brought the prisoner. The man was the one who seemed to be stunned here. The man was I take it you're a spy, so you likely already know the law around here. The Lord pointed to the servant who brought the prisoner. Give this man a weapon. The voices around you seemed to murmur again, and the servant drew his blade and handed it over to the prisoner. He took the blade, looked it over, and then proceeded to test it. Ugh. The prisoner sliced off the servant's arm with deadly prowess, and the man rolled to the floor, cradling the bleeding stump. He cried for help, but none seemed to mind except you. My, thirsty for blood, are you? Part of you wanted to run over to help, but the woman in charge had brought back the curtain, revealing her true form. So the bitch shows herself. The man on the floor kept on screaming. He reached outwards with both his hands towards the woman, and she simply stared back. Keep it down. You're in front of your queen after all. The man's scream ceased with one strike of the blade. Even as he reached forward with his last breath, and all his strength, the woman simply stared with a cold and distant look in her eyes. That was my favorite slave that you just killed. Well, saying that he didn't even know the first rule of survival. Always keep a hand on your blade. I take it you planned to avenge him then? Didn't realize you were so compassionate. Must be that mother's love or bull crap you women always write about. I'm sure you would be quite eager for a chance to fight me. Sadly, you will have to wait, as there is someone else who has been hungering for blood lately. It was almost unbelievable to see them ignore the man just killed. If they were this ruthless, then you didn't stand a chance trying to talk your way out of this mess. If it hadn't been for another distraction that caught your attention, you likely would have fled by now. More sounds of rattling chains came from behind the veiled throne. A large figure steered from behind it and stood, nearly bumping into a canopy of the throne. The woman's hands was a chain, and she lightly tugged on it to bring the figure forth. He approached her from behind, dwarfing her in size and stature as he moved out. It half frightened, half surprised, and half aroused you to see who it was. Ramos walked forward, barely dressed in little more than a small undergarment that was inappropriate and covered his straining package. The metal chains that coiled about his entire body were like a snake, squeezing, constricting, and causing him to bulge out more than usual. Every inch of him was on display. Every scar on his body, every fold of his muscle as he moved. There was nothing you couldn't see. You snapped back out of your daze as Ramos descended the steps and approached the convent. Along the way, he ignored the servant, presenting him a weapon. He oozed confidence in Moxic, and exhibited terror and danger. The convict seemed to back up a little when he began to size the beast up. You have a fast tongue, but I wonder if your sword is as quick. If you manage to defeat my Heledim, then you will be given 2 more choices, though I don't believe that you will need to hear them. So the mausoleum, bitch, hides behind our guards. You disgrace the name. Enough of the chatter. You have a blade, and this is my hand with my rules. Just don't die too quickly. You have a lot of spectators here today, and Haladim hasn't had much time to play lately. The man gritted his teeth as he looked back at the towering beastman. Ramos already wore a little armor, but at least it serves his fighting style. But this, you would have been senseless to enter a fight with just thin straps of leather and chains to protect yourself, and he had rejected the offer for a weapon too. Ramos was a master at hand-to-hand combat, but even he should have known when to push the limits of reason and confidence. One swipe from that sword and he would lose a limb, and a second swipe would likely end his life. Was this something that he had chosen, or was he a prisoner here as well? The woman called the man the convict killed a slave. So was Ramos captured and sold to her? You couldn't imagine someone actually managing to subdue him, even if the one in question was a woman who even you had to admit had an otherworldly beauty. Either way, he was in grave danger here, no matter how you looked at it. They stood at a standstill watching each other for a few moments before the convict finally made the first move. It was his last mistake. He was forward, sword aimed high and above him. From the look of things, he knew how to handle a sword. His stance was foreign to you, though. Ramos didn't bother moving. He had no need. The rider grabbed the blade mid-swing in one hand, and his other hand reached forward to grip the throat of the convict. He peeked through the hands that covered your face and found the man struggling in Ramos's grip. He tried to pry his blade free, but all he was able to do was cause the beastman to tighten his hold in both hands. Blood riveted out from one of the rhino's hand, while veins protruded from the other. The convict clawed with his hands to scratch at Ramos's eyes, but he was held too far away. He kicked his feet into his captor's abdomen, but the beastman's rock-hard abs just took the hit. Try as hard as the convict may, he was unable to lose himself from the beastman's hands as his face began to turn pale and blue. Something didn't seem right about all this. Ramos told you that he didn't kill not just once, but twice. If you didn't let go, the man was going to die. You bust out from hiding. There was no way he was doing any of this by choice. Ramos, stop. If someone's threatening you, then I can help. He reached for the blade at your side, but there still wasn't anything there. The beastman continued to ignore you, and the convict gasped for what little air he could. You were out in the open as you turned to see if anyone else was actually going to allow this bloodbath to continue. You hoped that maybe it would stop if they noticed you, but no one paid you any attention. It was as if you were there, but nothing more than part of the decor. Ramos! It took you several moments before you found the courage to turn around and look. You waited for the man to move even just his feet, but he was as still as a rock. Ramos, did you? You look around and jumped a little in surprise to find his eyes now fixated on you. He didn't move even as you backed up, only his eyes followed, but he wasn't the only one. The guards turned their heads, the nobles kept their piercing gaze on you, and even both of the dead bodies on the floor had their faces turned in your direction. You had got what you wanted, but to be you had got what you wanted, but I mean, you had got what you wanted to be the center of attention, but the silence in the room made you instantly regret coming out from hiding. You knew you didn't belong here, even every unblinking eye on you proved that. The woman started forward, her shoes making a resonating click with each step as she headed towards Ramos. Ramos continued to stay fixated. Ramos continued to stay transfixed on you. He didn't move a muscle even as her hand started to wander around his body. She took her time, running her fingers across his arms and chest, through his hair, and around all three of his arms. If her hands were coated in paint, Ramos would have been a fully covered canvas. Once she felt that she had touched and grabbed enough, she reached up to pull his face towards her. She gave a quick glance at you, smiled, and pressed her lips against Ramos's. Lustfully and drawn out, they kissed, as though she was trying to prove a point. The two passionately pushed their tongues deeper and deeper into the other until you had to turn away, a bit from embarrassment but also from jealousy. When she finally had her fun, she released him from her grip, and a thin string of saliva connected the two of them even as they parted. She turned his face back at you when she turned his face back at you, then moved to his side and whispered something into his ear. A strange smoke slithered out through her lips as she spoke. It wiggled in the air like a worm, then nestled itself inside the pachyderm's ears. His focused and attentive expression became calm and serene, like someone waking him up from a peaceful slumber. Whatever she was doing to him didn't seem to be harmful. As soon as she was done, she smiled innocently and headed back to her throne, where she clasped her hands together, looking as pleased as he could be. Ramos still stood there in a trance, with his head tipping from one side to the next. He had a goofy little smile. His eyes darted around the room. If you didn't know any better, he was likely drunk or lost to some kind of drug. That must have been how she was controlling him, through some kind of drug that was affecting his thoughts. Ramos' stupor seemed to end as his face tensed back up. His smile faded, and he once again stared back at you, his eyes now showing malicious intent. He no longer looked like the Ramos you knew. His eyes looked blank, almost lifeless, and a bit of black drool dribbled out the corner of his mouth. He wanted to say that it was just a side effect of whatever drug the woman had fed him, but this was beginning to look like something far worse. He started forward, inching his way towards you, with his arms reaching out to grab at you next. It was clear to see what she had told him. She couldn't have. There was no trial here, whatever here was. There was no trial here, wherever here was. He wouldn't. He had no weapon to defend himself, and there was nowhere to go or even hide. And even if you ran away now, could you even escape? The beastman had already closed the gap between you two. He seemed taller than you imagined as he loomed over you. Your breathing became ragged, your heart beat like a drum, and your feet were too stiff to move despite feeling like jelly. Despite what she said, he wouldn't hurt you, would he? Ramos, your mind went blank as you couldn't find anything else to say to save you from this predicament. Finally, he reached out a hand, and you saw your fate. He was gentle. His giant hand gripped your chin, and he made you stare into his eyes. You expected emptiness, hatred, bloodlust, but what you saw was hope and affection. Even more than that was a cry for help. Behind those cold eyes, he was fighting something, a demon only he could see. His hands shook, likely resistance to whatever was attempting to wrestle back control of him. You wanted to tell him to continue fighting it, but he looked to be giving it his all already. Thank you, Caden. I can't keep. Although he couldn't finish his sentence, you knew what he was going to say. His fight wasn't something he could win, and you could tell that his body was already starting to betray him again. While he still had time, he lifted you up with his big hands and cradled you in his arms. He brought you close to his body, and you felt his warmth. He looked up at the Lord, her face contorted into anger, and then Ramos ran. The woman spat out insults and orders, and the two of you were chased out of the room by soldiers. Ramos carried you through the palace, in and out of unfamiliar rooms and down extravagant halls. He was forced to take detours and adjust his movements as the soldiers began to block his path. If you weren't here, he would have taken them, or at the very least, if you had your blade at your side, you could have assisted him. Right now, you didn't care if you had to kill one or two, or even all the guards if it meant allowing the two of you to escape. So you found yourself out on a balcony overlooking the city. Far below the veranda was a large canal that wended through the city. The soldiers began to arrive, and now there was no escape. They had guided you here, and you fell to their trap. Survive. What? They were the last words you heard from him as he tossed you into the air and off the balcony. The whipping winds pushed the tears out of your eyes, and you frantically scrambled to reach out for something. From above you heard his battle cry and the accompanying cry of people in pain. The waters below came closer and closer, yet there was only one thing on your mind. Ramos. You awoke from your nightmares, winds and sweat from your head to your feet. You couldn't stop shaking, your body was on fire. You brought a hand up to your aching chest. If you didn't know any better, you would have expected a drummer was trapped inside your heart. What, a dream? That dream, it felt far too real to just be a nightmare. It was the exact same feeling you had back in the pool in the catacombs. You lifted your head and were hit with a sudden feeling of vertigo. A bowel rose for your stomach, but you quickly pushed it back down. The whole room was swaying, or rather rocking. It was steady and smooth, but was making you feel sick. As you looked around, you found your surroundings where yet again unfamiliar to you. You heard water echoing through the room and splashing against the sides. As you glanced out a large window, you saw only deep blue waves stretching on for miles. I don't see the sea gate. How far out are we? Or rather, how long have I been traveling? You thought you spotted a small speck of land on the horizon, but as it began to grow larger, rising above the surface of the water, and turned out to be a whale. Water jutted out from the top of its head, and it dove back down. Now an awful storm nowhere near Havana. Whales can't even get close to the city with the reef and the sea gate. That's an odd-looking lantern. Atop both of the bedside tables was a covered candle of what you first assumed was one. It emitted such a brilliant glow of light, yet you felt little to no heat. As you peered inside, you saw a glass-looking orb shining brilliantly. You had to turn away as your eyes began to hurt. What? How's this thing making light without fire? Inscribed in the base of the lantern was an insignia of a lizard-breathing fire with the words Ignatius Ecadescens encircling it, and just below that was a switch. You pressed it once and it turned off, then again, and it turned back on. Witchcraft. You press the button several dozen more times, making the light vanish and reappear at your leisure. Perhaps it's a new invention from someone in Azite. They always seem to create the most fascinating things. They think light without flame. I wonder how it works. Thoughts of the coronation flash through your mind. Thoughts of the coronation flash through your mind, and you look around suddenly for signs of enemies. As you twisted to look around, a sharp pain jolted down your back. You removed the covers from your body and found gaze wrapped tightly around your entire torso. You were just about to pull at the knot that tied it all together when the door to the room opened. Oh my! Your aunt's mouth dropped to the floor, and she stood awestruck in the doorway. Yeah, what's wrong? It's Caden. Caden, he's finally awake. Quick, go get Leandros, hurry. Marilyn scurried to the side, where Esther peeked his head in. After picking his jaw off the floor, he scurried off. Oh, thank the heavens, you were hurt, and we thought we would lose you. Its tears welled up in her eyes, and she began to bawl, her makeup running down her face as she went over to give you a hug. She wrapped her arms around you, and you yelped in pain. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm just so overcome with, I forgot. It's alright. The door slammed open, and there stood Leandros, panting heavily. He ran over to you, and you braced yourself for what you was soon to be another hug, only this time you stretched out your hands as he charged over. Hold, no hugging. You could hear his feet screech or halt on the hardwood floor. Caden. He was doing his best to keep himself from leaping at you and hugging you, but finally gave up when he saw your condition. Esther trailed in from behind and entered the room as well. You're awake. Okay, I'll stop right here. Alright, so we had that strange dream of Caden being in I guess, I'm not sure, but I'm guessing this may be the royal palace in Farhawan. It was another kingdom in the lady that we just saw, Ranisa, I think. She's the queen of Farhawan. I'm just guessing, I'm not sure, but Ramos we did mention in the lore that Ramos is originally from Farhawan, so I wonder if this is either in the past or what could possibly happen in the future. But it could be that this is what Ramos was in the past. Maybe he was a slave, and they have this kind of chemical or maybe even magic, to control people as slaves, I guess. Because you saw like how he basically groped all over Ramos. I guess how the power works. Like you just do whatever you want, and the smoke or whatever it is that they use, it forces the person to obey. And like your true self is fighting to control it, but you really can't if you're forced to obey. So I don't know if this may have been like Ramos' past, kind of. like a certain verse of Ramos' past, or maybe this could be what happens to them in the future. I don't know. But anyway, I'm just thinking. But anyway, it looks like Caden is safe now. Yeah, he's in the middle of the ocean on the ship, away from the what's going on in Havana with the assassins. So it looks like he's safe because I think I heard his parents mentioned about them having a boat. So he's probably on their boat to build the ocean away from what's going on back in Havana. So we'll figure out what's going to happen next time. Considering, I mean, we'll figure out what they're gonna do next time with about how what's gonna happen now that they don't have control of Havana no more, the kingdom, and how they're going to go from here. Like they try to go and get help, or it's probably what they're gonna try to do, or ways of force to combat the assassins, or whatever force that's in the city. So we're going to stay on Weymouth's route throughout the story, and maybe eventually we might start Casero, but I'm saying eventually. Oh, this dog out here is barking, so I had to pause. But anyway, we're gonna stick with Ramos, and maybe eventually we'll go to Casero and maybe even Leandros. But right now, I just want to do Ramos because he's the one I'm interested in the most. I mean, I wanted to do. I think it may be more appropriate to do Ramos to be. I think it would have been more appropriate to do Leandros first. However, if I did Leandros, I probably would have lost interest because Ramos is just the character I'm more interested in. So I was more interested in covering Ramos. Cover the character you're the most interested in first, then you go to the other one. So gonna do Ramos first, then Casero second. Eventually, with Casero, I'll do him eventually second, like maybe later this year, and then eventually Leandros. So that's how I'm gonna go about it. So we'll continue with Kingsguard next time with Ramos. Thank you all very much for watching. Bye.